Do not watch the weekly data, instead the trend is your friend. So as I've said in countless videos before, I'm not watching too much the weekly EV sales data that we're getting out of China here. By the way, today beautiful weather here in Beijing, so there's no smog at all, basically because it rained yesterday and we had a little bit of colder weather. And yeah, the EVs are working on a local level here, that's for sure, along with many other changes that the city has made. But let's not get too optimistic here. There's still lots of work to do for the clean revolution, for renewables, for the energy transition, and for sustainable transport. And well, sometimes people should question whether or not individual transport is even the solution, but you know, part of the solution definitely are EV. And if you're just looking at the stock prices currently, like I'm invested in Tesla and NIO, then you would say it might be the end of the EV revolution, right? And there are a couple of voices out there already today saying we'll have a comeback of the internal combustion engine. We'll have at least a peak or hype of hybrids. And well, coming back to the weeklies, because I know people are watching it, and we got a new data point today from China in which overall the demand has been quite soft, I would say. So I'm not going to go into the details, but it's not really great numbers, to be honest. But interestingly, not only for EV but also for some of the range extended vehicles, such as Li Auto, which is still mainly selling range extended vehicles, and only the Li Mega is the first EV which has now, I think this week, around about 170 sales. So you'll see, for them it will be a tough thing to actually also transition to pure battery electric vehicles, which in my opinion are still the future. And I said the trend is your friend, not the weekly numbers. And let's talk for a moment about NIO as an example here, because it could be that NIO is actually ahead of the others. What do I mean by that? So for NIO, we now got a new data point around 3,000 cars this week, and it's an increase over the last week. The last week has been an increase about against the week before. So the trend is up for NIO, and that is despite the overall situation, the macro situation here with car sales is currently quite depressed, as I mentioned, that the whole industry is actually suffering some lower data points currently. So it's interesting. NIO would be the last company that you would expect to do well in this kind of an environment, right? Because you would expect that people are possibly not keen on buying highly priced vehicles in the premium to luxury segment in which NIO is positioned. Yet their sales are higher than XPeng. Their sales are definitely higher than Li Auto when it comes to the pure electric vehicles. They're actually quite close to the Li Auto numbers, including range extended vehicles. The numbers for NIO are actually quite similar to the Tesla numbers, but that's why I'm also saying don't watch the weeklies, and sometimes even don't watch the monthlies. There are always very specific explanations of why things are happening. And in the case of Tesla, I think there is still a chance that some of it is due to the fact that currently they're still at the beginning of the quarter exporting vehicles mainly. So it may turn out not as bad as it seems on the first look, but generally, again, just watching the trend and your as being your friend in this regard, I think NIO comes out quite strong here, interestingly. And why I say that NIO might be ahead of the others here is that maybe NIO had its downturn earlier than others, and it's now actually consolidating and recovering earlier than some others. We will have Tesla earnings this week as well, and people are worried about Tesla, about its sales, and to be honest, I think, yeah, some of the expectations out there might be too high, and possibly they are gonna disappoint in some regards. And what is interesting here is that maybe Tesla is also in the process of consolidating. I don't think Tesla is going to collapse in terms of sales, also not here in China. I still think Tesla has a good value proposition here and a competitive product, while still they are also facing issues of competing here with all of the local competitors, that's for sure. And I mentioned it in previous videos, how I'm becoming also increasingly more bearish on my Tesla stock position, just simply because of that. I think Tesla actually needs to start selling better in other markets, like in the US, for example. But overall, as I said, I don't think that will be the end of the world for Tesla, and they might be just following NIO's path here, with experiencing some transitionary demand problems, which I think will recover again. And NIO seems to be pointing that way as a pure BEV brand in the premium to luxury segment, which it might be a bit premature to say, but we are kind of set up here with NIO currently to achieve around 11,000 to 12,000 sales this month, which I think would set us up to, well, I haven't checked the numbers yet, but maybe last year was around 6,000, 7,000 the same month, right? So almost a 100% year-over-year increase maybe, and round about a 20 to 40%, let's say 30% quarter over, no, not quarter over quarter increase, but annual growth rate there. So that's not too shabby. NIO is growing double digits, and in a very, very tough market. And that's why, from a stock market perspective, actually NIO should be interesting, because, you know, Tesla will have a different trajectory now of trying to gain more growth from a high base, meaning they are selling larger volume now, and it's in this environment will be quite difficult to achieve higher growth rates year over year. While NIO, for example, still has a potential on the NIO brand, but then also the sub-brands coming in on top of that, right? So these are real growth catalysts for NIO, and if it's not for this year, I think at least next year should again reward us with high growth numbers, at least in a short term, if you will, right? I'm not assuming yet that the sub-brands will be a success, but definitely they will be put out there, so that volume will likely happen. So we're gonna see those volume spikes. And then, of course, stocks are measured on their earnings per share development, right, and trajectory. So again, the trend is your friend. For Tesla, they might be now between growth waves, that's what Elon Musk said as well, and may flatten out a little bit. I think that's why they're now starting talking more about robo-taxis and so on, because that will be, you know, future potential, that's high margin, that's something where you can add an additional value on the stock, even if the sales and the earnings per share on those revenues are basically staying flat, because that might be the case for some time. Let's not kidding ourselves here, right? But what Tesla would need for that to also result in a higher share price would obviously be that the US starts cutting rates, or that the rates stay at least how they are and not keep on spiking like they have in the last couple of weeks. So if that's the case, then due to the discounted cash flow models and so on, they can look further out in the future, and that will also start to discount some of the future revenues that are maybe far out there, right? So that's one thing. And if we now compare it to NIO, actually NIO has been beaten down a lot because investors didn't like that NIO is spending a lot, right? But at the same time, this is of course a bad thing, because the earnings per share have been terrible. At the same time, this is giving a huge opportunity that if they manage to cut cost or grow as just stated before and have decent margins on that, then we should see a hopefully positive earnings per share trajectory. And that's something which might be rare currently in the industry. I mean, I just mentioned it, for Tesla this might not be the case in a very short term, but for NIO there are some chances that this might be the case in the next couple of quarters. So, that's why I'm thinking NIO might be a little bit ahead of the curve here and is indicating, even on those weeklies, that the trend should be our friend for now. It's a bit premature to say, but that's just how I see it. And in the overall macro context, right, the question whether or not we will see more EV adoption, I'm actually in the opinion that the economics of decreasing battery prices, the better technology, the better usability and so on, will bring us to an EV adoption where the vast amount of growth is still in front and ahead of us and not behind us. And so that's still coming, especially in China, where we are now close to 50% adoption. And of course, I still see also that the range extended vehicles will gradually have to go fully electric, because it simply doesn't make much sense to carry around an internal combustion engine engine in a car. It's just not efficient, despite the fact that it's giving you currently an advantage when it comes to range anxiety and cost still. But I think with the Li Auto sales numbers and so on, the indications are showing up on the horizon that this story might be about to change. And then China still staying the biggest market, the vast market of what's gonna happen in the future. And for the US, which has just become the largest oil producer, by the way, it's gonna be tough. And if they don't let the Chinese in, then I'm not sure if Elon Musk and Tesla alone can do it. It's a cultural thing. It's a matter of political will as well. In my opinion, still, the technical facts and the costs are speaking for EV, even in the US. That's where, in my opinion, Tesla should focus on growing, because here in China they will be facing more competition, but still the pie is growing for everybody. And with that, greetings from Beijing at a luckily blue sky day. Bye for now.